Welcome to the Deep Dive, your shortcut to being well-informed. We sift through the sources, pull out the key ideas, so you don't have to.
And today, we're getting into something really fundamental.
Yeah.
It's underneath almost everything we do.
Yeah, we're exploring the affect heuristic. Sounds fancy, but it's basically about how your immediate feelings, your gut reactions shape your judgment, often without you even noticing.
It's like this emotional current, you know, running just below the surface of your choices, often steering the ship before your logical mind even grabs the wheel.
Absolutely. Think about it. Have you ever bought something totally on impulse? Just because it felt right in the moment?
Oh, yeah.
And then later you're looking at it thinking, what was I thinking? Or maybe you made a snap judgment about someone, that immediate gut feeling.
Only to find out later you were way off base. Happens all the time.
Right. Or maybe you felt so bored, so restless, that taking a big risk, maybe something like a relapse, if that's something you struggle with, suddenly didn't seem so dangerous.
Or that flash of anger that makes a choice, maybe even a destructive one, feel completely, utterly justified right then and there.
Exactly. Those moments, they perfectly illustrate what we're diving into today. These aren't just like random emotional blips.
No, they're examples of the affect heuristic. It's our brain's super fast emotional assessment shortcut, and it often calls the shots before logic even gets a chance to chime in.
So our deep dive today is all about understanding this really powerful, often unconscious mental shortcut. We're going to unpack how it works, look at the brain science and the psychology behind it.
And crucially, we want to equip you with some practical tools. Things like emotional literacy, mindfulness, strategies to help you manage this.
The whole mission, really, is to help you create that vital pause, that little gap between feeling something and acting on it.
Right. That space where your logic can catch up, so you can make choices that genuinely serve you, your long-term goals, your values, instead of just being swept along by whatever feeling hits you hardest in the moment.
So get ready. We're going on a journey, starting with the brain's quick-fire emotional pathways, digging into some deep psychological patterns.
And landing on some really practical, everyday strategies you can actually use to get a better handle on your decisions.
This is the affect heuristic, when feelings hijack your facts. Let's dive in. Okay, so let's start right at the beginning. The affect heuristic. What exactly is it? It sounds a bit academic, maybe.
It does, but it's really about something incredibly human, right?
Well.
It's about feelings and how they drive decisions.
So it's a mental shortcut, a heuristic.
Exactly. It's one of those shortcuts our brain uses all the time. Instead of doing a slow, careful, objective analysis, weighing all the pros and cons.
Which takes time and energy.
A lot of time and energy.
Yeah.
So instead, your brain takes a faster route. It relies on your immediate emotional response.
Yeah.
How does this thing feel?
Good, bad, scary, exciting.
Right. If it feels good, positive, we tend to lean towards it, think it's beneficial, low risk. If it feels bad, negative, we tend to shy away, see it as risky or harmful.
That gut feeling becomes the main piece of data, almost.
It really does. It acts as this powerful, almost instantaneous guide, way faster than logic.
And it's not just a simple good-bad switch, is it? Like we said, boredom can make risk seem less risky. Anger can make a bad choice feel, right?
Oh, absolutely. These aren't just gentle nudges. They can be full-on emotional overrides. Your feeling about the situation completely changes your perception of the facts.
Which leads us to how this actually happens in the brain. The neurological fast lane, you called it, where emotion basically cuts in line ahead of logic.
That's a good way to put it. For a long time, the thinking was, well, all emotional responses must go through the higher cognitive centers first. The thinking part of the brain has to process it.
Makes sense.
But then, research by neuroscientist Joseph Ledoux, really groundbreaking stuff, revealed a different pathway, much faster one.
This is the amygdala's emergency rep.
Precisely. The amygdala, often called the brain's fear center, though it handles other emotions too. It doesn't always wait for the full report from the neocortex.
The neocortex being our rational thinking brain.
Yes. So sensory inputs, say, a sudden loud noise or a shadow moving quickly in your peripheral vision, it goes to the thalamus first. That's like the brain's sensory switchboard.
Okay.
And from the thalamus, Ledoux found, the signal can take a shortcut straight to the amygdala, bypassing the neocortex entirely, or at least getting there much faster.
Wow. So your emotional reaction can actually fire off before your thinking brain has even fully processed what's happening.
Exactly. The amygdala sounds the alarm, triggers a feeling, maybe initiates a physical response, while the neocortex is still catching up, trying to analyze the details, figure out if the threat is real.
That's incredible. So that gut feeling isn't just a suggestion, it's often the brain's first verdict. Logic is playing catch-up.
That's the key insight, and it has huge implications. It means we're often reacting from a place that isn't fully informed by rational analysis.
It explains so much about impulsive decisions or knee-jerk reactions in arguments.
It really does. And Ledoux showed this brilliantly with his experiments on rats. This wasn't just theory.
Right, tell us about that. He damaged their auditory cortex.
He did. Essentially, he made it so the rats couldn't consciously hear or register sounds via the normal cortical pathway.
Okay.
But then he paired a specific tone with a mild electric shock. And guess what?
They learned to fear the tone anyway.
They did, quickly. The sound went from the ear to the thalamus and then took that direct shortcut to the amygdala. No need for the auditory cortex.
So the amygdala perceived the threat, remembered the association, and triggered the fear response all on its own, without the thinking part involved.
Exactly. It demonstrated that this emotional learning and response system can operate independently, unconsciously.
That sounds very much like the neural hijacking concept, when that fast thalamus amygdala circuit just takes over.
It is. It's a survival mechanism, clearly.
Right.
React first, think later might save your life if that shadow really is a predator.
But in modern life, maybe not always helpful.
Right. It can go seriously awry. Think about post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD. That's a tragic example of this circuit becoming hyperactive.
How?
In PTSD, this learned fear pathway becomes incredibly sensitized. The slightest trigger, something that reminds the person unconsciously of the trauma, can activate that amygdala emergency route.
So it floods the system with stress hormones.
Massive amounts. Cortisol, adrenaline, driving impulsive actions, maybe aggression, intense fear, freezing up, things that feel completely overwhelming and out of control to the person experiencing them.
And totally confusing because the rational brain knows the original danger isn't present.
Precisely. They might feel, as one source put it, damage to the core and beyond redemption, because their body and emotions are reacting so intensely, hijacked by the past. It shows how the body literally keeps the score, as Bessel van der Kolk says.
Wow, so these emotional responses aren't just about immediate threats, but also about something deeper, like our mind wanting consistency, trying to make sense of things internally.
That brings us perfectly to Leon Festinger and his theory of cognitive dissonance, another huge piece of this puzzle.
Right, cognitive dissonance, that feeling of discomfort when our beliefs and actions don't line up.
Exactly. Festinger's core idea is that we humans have this fundamental drive for internal consistency. We want our beliefs, our attitudes, our opinions, our behaviors to all align.
We like harmony inside.
We really do. And when there's an inconsistency, a clash, a dissonance, it creates psychological discomfort. It feels bad.
And that bad feeling, that emotional state, is the key motivator.
That's the crucial link Festinger made. The discomfort is the engine. It's an unpleasant emotional state that powerfully motivates us, often unconsciously, to reduce that dissonance, to restore internal harmony.
Okay, and the stronger the dissonance, the more motivated we are. What makes it stronger?
Several things increase the discomfort. One is the importance of the decision. Choosing what socks to wear, probably low dissonance. Choosing who to marry or what career path to take. High potential for dissonance.
Makes sense? What else?
The attractiveness of the alternatives you didn't choose. If you had to pick between two really great options, the dissonance of rejecting one good one will be higher.
You keep thinking about what you missed out on.
Exactly. And also, a lack of cognitive overlap. Meaning, if the options were very different from each other, making the choice feel more significant, more like a definitive path taken versus another path completely abandoned.
Okay, so you've made a decision, you feel this uncomfortable dissonance, maybe buyer's remorse or doubt. How do people actually reduce that feeling, especially if they can't just undo the decision?
Well, since you often can't change the behavior, you change your thoughts about it, your cognitions.
Oh, like you convince yourself.
Pretty much. One common way is to emphasize all the positive aspects of the choice you made and simultaneously downplay or minimize the good things about the alternatives you rejected.
Oh, that other job probably would have been really stressful anyway.
Exactly. Or you might find ways to see the options as more similar than they really were. Establishing cognitive overlap, Festinger called it. Convincing yourself they weren't that different after all, so the choice wasn't so monumental.
It's like our brain is doing PR work on our own decisions.
It absolutely is. It's actively editing our perception of reality to reduce that internal emotional discomfort. And this isn't just about justifying bad choices. It's a fundamental process. But the insight here is it makes us incredibly resistant to information that might increase dissonance.
Ah, so we actively seek out information that confirms we were right and avoid stuff that suggests we were wrong.
We absolutely do. Cognitive dissonance is a powerful driver of selective exposure. We tend to hunt for information that aligns with our existing beliefs, attitudes, and choices because it feels good. It reduces dissonance.
And we actively dodge information that challenges us.
Yes, we avoid things that could introduce more dissonance. It creates a kind of self-imposed echo chamber. It's emotionally easier.
Can you give a real-world example?
Sure. Think about someone who just bought a new car, a specific make and model. Studies have shown they are suddenly much more likely to read advertisements for the exact car they just bought.
Not for other cars they considered.
Nope, they're not shopping anymore. They're seeking validation, reinforcing the belief they made a smart choice. It eases any lingering dissonance.
Okay, that makes sense. What about something like smoking?
Classic example. Someone who smokes knows intellectually about the health risks. That information creates huge dissonance with their behavior.
So they avoid it.
Often, yes. They might actively avoid reading health warnings, tune out anti-smoking campaigns, or seek out articles that question the link. Because engaging with the dissonant information is emotionally painful. It's easier in the short term to maintain the behavior by avoiding the conflicting facts.
And our friends, our social circles, they play a role in this too, kind of helping us feel better about our choices.
Definitely. Social groups are a huge resource for dissonance reduction. When we feel that inner conflict, we often instinctively turn to people who share our views or who will support our decision.
We seek confirmation.
We do. And our conversations often naturally drift towards topics where we know we'll find agreement. This external validation from our social network provides emotional comfort, reinforces our beliefs, and helps solidify our viewpoint.
So it helps maintain that internal equilibrium, but maybe sometimes at the cost of seeing things objectively.
Well, that's the trade-off, isn't it? Our need to belong, to feel understood and validated, interacts with our need for internal consistency. Sometimes maintaining that social and emotional comfort means filtering out inconvenient truths.
Okay, so we've got the basics down. The affect heuristic, cognitive dissonance, these foundational ideas. Now let's bring it into everyday life. How do these feelings really take the wheel?
Well, one of the most powerful ways is through our habits. James Clear's work on habit formation is really insightful here.
Right, habits are like automatic shortcuts the brain loves. Emotional and cognitive economy, you called it.
Exactly. Once a behavior becomes a habit, it runs on autopilot. Minimum conscious thought required. Our brain loves that efficiency.
And Clear has that four-step loop, right? Cue, craving.
Cue, craving, response, reward. That's the cycle. Something triggers you, the cue, you get a desire for something, the craving, you perform the action, the response, and you get a satisfying outcome, the reward, which makes you want to do it again next time the cue appears.
Like seeing your phone light up, you wanting to see the notification, craving, checking it, the response, getting that little hit of novelty or connection, reward.
Perfect example. And that cycle, repeated often enough, builds the habit.
He talks about the habit line too, that point where it flips from effortful to automatic.
Yes, that threshold is key. Initially, a new behavior takes conscious effort, focus, willpower. It's above the line. But with enough repetition, driven by that reward loop, it crosses the line.
And becomes automatic, operates more or less without thinking.
Right. The emotional resistance drops. The cognitive load decreases. It becomes the path of least resistance, which our brain, seeking efficiency, prefers.
So habits are a way our emotions guide us towards efficiency, essentially. But Clear also talks about identity-based habits. How does that connect?
This is really powerful. Instead of focusing just on the outcome, I want to lose 20 pounds, you focus on the identity you want to embody. I am a healthy person, or I am someone who exercises regularly.
So you align your actions with who you want to be.
Precisely. When you make choices based on what would a healthy person do, or what would a writer do, the actions feel more authentic, more aligned with a deeper emotional commitment to that identity.
Ah, so that emotional connection to the identity can actually become stronger than, say, the immediate feeling of wanting to skip the gym or eat junk food.
That's the idea. Your feelings about who you are or who you are becoming can override your more transient, immediate emotional urges. It shifts the motivation from external outcomes to internal consistency with your chosen self-image.
That makes a lot of sense. So that's our internal world of habits. What about the external world? Social influence seems huge here, too. Robert Cialdini talks about automatic consistency.
Yeah, Cialdini's work on influence is classic. Automatic consistency is our deep-seated tendency to be and appear consistent with what we have already done or said.
Once we commit to something, especially publicly, We feel pressure to stick with it.
Exactly. Both internal pressure to maintain our self-image and external pressure to meet others' expectations. And mostly, this is useful. It's a shortcut. We don't have to reevaluate every single decision constantly. It saves mental energy.
It can trap us.
It can.
Yeah.
If we stick with a course of action, just because we started it, even when new information suggests it's a bad idea, that's automatic consistency leading us astray. We become slaves to our past commitments.
Cialdini mentions there are signals, right? Bodily signals that maybe our consistency is misplaced.
He does. He suggests we often get a gut feeling, maybe a tightness in the stomach or feeling in the heart of hearts, that tells us when we're sticking with something purely out of obligation, not genuine belief or desire. We need to learn to listen to those signals.
That ties right into another Cialdini principle, social proof. The idea that if lots of people are doing it, it must be right.
Oh, social proof is incredibly powerful, especially when we're uncertain. We look to others to see how to behave, what to believe. Cialdini's line is stark. The greater the number of people who find any idea correct, the more the idea will be correct.
We feel it's safer to go with the crowd, an emotional safety net.
Absolutely. Think about that example of the doomsday cult. Their prediction failed, the world didn't end. Logic would say, okay, we were wrong.
But they didn't do that.
No. Because the physical evidence failed them, they doubled down on social evidence. They went from being secretive to actively trying to recruit new members.
Why? To make themselves feel better.
Essentially, yes. If they could convince more people to believe, then their own threatened beliefs would feel truer, more valid, despite the lack of physical proof. It shows how a group's emotional need for validation can completely override factual reality.
That's a chilling example of collective emotional hijacking. And then there's obedience to authority, the Milgram experiment. That's just raw emotional pressure overriding personal judgment.
The Milgram experiments are deeply disturbing, but incredibly revealing. You have ordinary people administering what they believe are painful, even dangerous electric shocks to someone else.
Just because a guy in a lab coat tells them to continue, even when the learner is screaming in agony.
Right. The emotional weight of obeying a perceived legitimate authority figure, the sense of obligation in that context, was so strong for many participants that it overrode their own moral compass, their empathy, their common sense. It's a stark demonstration of how external emotional pressures can hijack our actions.
So we've got habits, consistency, social proof, authority, all shaping our decisions through emotion. What about the stories we tell ourselves? Cognitive biases, like selection bias.
Selection bias is huge. It's about how we unconsciously filter information based on what we already believe or expect. We set up a default story in our mind.
Maybe based on an initial feeling or a past experience.
Exactly. And once that story is there, we tend to notice and remember information that fits the story and ignore or discount information that contradicts it.
So our feelings literally select the facts we pay attention to.
Precisely. And this leads to repeating mistakes, holding on to flawed beliefs, because we stop looking for evidence that we might be wrong. Our emotional desire for certainty, for our story to be true, makes us blind.
How do we even know when this is happening to us? What are the warning signs?
Some signals might be feeling instantly certain about something complex, getting really defensive when someone challenges your view, or realizing you only seem to remember examples that support your case.
That quick defensiveness, that feels very emotional.
It often is. To counter it, you need deliberate strategies. Ask yourself tough questions. Okay, let's assume for a second I'm wrong here.
Yeah.
What might I be missing? Or who disagrees with me on this and why? What's their perspective?
Actively seeking out the counter-argument, inviting that discomfort.
Yes. And another great technique is the pre-mortem.
Right, where you imagine the project or decision has already failed.
Exactly. Before you even start, you get your team together, or just do it yourself, and say, okay, fast forward 6 months, this plan failed spectacularly. Why? List all the possible reasons.
It forces you to anticipate pitfalls, to see beyond your initial optimism or emotionally driven certainty.
Precisely. It deliberately injects realism and considers alternatives, acting as a direct counter to the hijacking effects of selection bias and overconfidence. It's about planning for failure to increase the chance of success.
Okay, we've seen how these emotional shortcuts play out daily. Now, let's dig even deeper. What about the really deep-seated, often unconscious drivers, the stuff laid down way back, maybe?
Yeah, this is where we get into the foundational emotional patterns that can shape our entire lives, often without us realizing it. These aren't just habits, they're more like core operating systems.
Like attachment styles. Those seem fundamental to relationships.
Absolutely. Attachment theory suggests our early experiences with caregivers create a kind of blueprint for how we approach intimacy and connection later in life.
There are three main styles, right? Secure, anxious.
Secure, anxious, and avoidant. Secure attachment usually leads to comfort with intimacy and autonomy. Anxious attachment often involves a fear of abandonment and a craving for closeness, maybe sometimes seeming needy.
And avoidant.
Avoidant attachment typically involves discomfort with closeness, valuing independence highly, and sometimes pushing partners away when things get too intimate. These styles powerfully shape how we feel and behave in romantic relationships.
And that anxious avoidant trap sounds like a recipe for constant emotional turmoil.
It really can be. It's a very common dynamic. You have one partner, anxious, who deeply desires closeness and reassurance, constantly seeking more intimacy.
While the other partner, avoidant, feels smothered by that closeness and instinctively pulls back, needing space.
Exactly. It creates this painful push-pull cycle. The anxious partner feels perpetually insecure and not getting enough, while the avoidant partner feels constantly pressured and misunderstood. Satisfaction tends to be low for both.
That example of Paul, who wants the ideal woman but then finds fault when she gets close, that's classic avoidant.
Textbook avoidant behavior. Idealizing from afar, but then devaluing or finding flaws as intimacy increases as an unconscious strategy to create distance and manage their discomfort with closeness. They often blame external factors, not their own internal pattern.
And that dating advice, play hard to get, that actually attracts avoidance.
It often does, because it allows the avoidant partner to maintain control over the level of intimacy and avoids triggering their discomfort with sustained closeness. The real insight here is how these deep, often unconscious emotional patterns drive our relationship choices, overriding even our conscious desires for love and connection. For someone with an avoidant style, recognizing this need for space and communicating it clearly, "It's not you, it's my need for space," is a crucial first step.
So beyond personal history, what about the broader environment? B.F. Skinner had some pretty radical ideas about environmental control over behavior.
Skinner really challenged the idea of the autonomous man, the notion that we're purely driven by free will from within. He argued that our behavior is largely shaped and controlled by its consequences in the environment, by reinforcement and punishment.
So our feelings and actions are essentially learned responses to our surroundings.
From his perspective, yes. What feels good or bad, what actions we take, are often the result of our learning history within our specific environment. It suggests that much of what we call personality or willpower might be complex patterns of conditioned responses.
Even something like attention. He didn't see it as an inner choice.
No, Skinner viewed attention not as some inner gatekeeper we consciously direct, but as a behavior controlled by environmental contingencies. Stimuli grab our attention because they've been associated with important things: rewards, dangers in our past, either evolutionarily or through personal experience.
So what we find interesting or alarming is itself a conditioned response.
Largely, yes. Our environment has taught us what to pay attention to by reinforcing attention to certain things and not others.
And culture, as the big social environment, plays a massive role in this conditioning.
Absolutely. Culture, according to Skinner, is the set of practices evolved by a group to shape and maintain the behavior of its members, usually in ways that promote the group's survival. It dictates which emotional expressions are acceptable, which behaviors are rewarded, which are punished, subtly controlling us through social contingencies.
Okay, now we're really going deep. Psychoanalytic perspectives. Freud, he wasn't too optimistic about happiness, was he?
No, Freud believed the basic human drive for pleasure, the pleasure principle, inevitably clashes with the demands of civilization. We have to renounce many of our primal instincts, like aggression.
And that renunciation, that denial, it doesn't just go away.
Freud argued it gets internalized, becomes the foundation of our conscience, our superego. But here's the surprising insight. This internalized denial doesn't make us content. It actually fuels guilt. The superego becomes harsh, intolerant, making us feel guilty not just for bad actions, but even for forbidden thoughts or impulses.
So unconscious guilt is a major hidden driver of our emotions and choices.
A massive one, in Freud's view. He linked its origins partly to the Oedipus complex, that early developmental stage of unconscious desires and conflicts regarding parents, which he saw as establishing this primordial sense of guilt that shapes us throughout life.
It's a heavy perspective. What about Jung? He talked about the ego versus the larger self.
Jung saw the conscious ego as just a small part of the whole personality. The self includes the vast realm of the unconscious, holding not just personal memories but also universal inherited patterns he called archetypes.
Like universal symbols or emotional patterns.
Yes. And Jung warned that if we ignore or repress this deeper collective unconscious part of ourselves, what he called the childhood state of the collective psyche, it doesn't disappear.
It can overwhelm us.
It can overwhelm our conscious intentions. It can inhibit, distort, even sabotage our goals. The insight is that these deep, universal emotional currents need to be acknowledged and integrated. Otherwise, they can hijack our lives from below the surface of awareness. Jung also felt we're always driven by dominating ideas, even if we think we're purely rational.
That theme of unconscious forces continues with Ernest Becker and the terror of existence.
Becker's idea is profound and unsettling. He argued humans are unique in facing two great fears: the fear of life, the burden of choice and responsibility, and the overwhelming fear of death, the terror of annihilation.
And most of our lives are spent trying to deny this.
Essentially, yes. Our character, our culture, our daily activities often function as elaborate defenses against this existential terror. He even saw schizophrenia as a tragic failure of these defenses, an inability to shut out the terrifying reality of our existence. Neurosis, similarly, reflects the struggle with these deep anxieties. The insight is that many of our seemingly ordinary emotional drives and choices might actually be rooted in this fundamental, often unconscious effort to manage existential dread.
And Erik Erikson adds the dimension of identity development over time, navigating these conflicts.
Erikson focused on how a stable sense of self, or ego identity, emerges through resolving psychosocial crises at different life stages. He showed how individual struggles can sometimes resonate deeply with collective unconscious conflicts, especially during times of societal crisis. His analysis of someone like Hitler suggested how an individual's extreme personal experience could tap into and amplify latent anxieties in a whole population, leading to massive, emotionally driven social movements. It highlights the interplay between personal psychology and broader historical forces driven by deep emotional currents.
These perspectives really emphasize how much is going on beneath the surface, driving our feelings and decisions. And trauma. That seems like a very direct, visceral kind of hijacking.
Trauma is perhaps the most direct example. When someone experiences overwhelming trauma, the brain's survival systems, particularly in the amygdala and brainstem areas deep below the rational cortex, become hypersensitized.
So they stay on high alert?
Constantly. The slightest cue that faintly resembles the traumatic event, a sound, a smell, an image, can trigger that survival response system again. Massive flood of stress hormones.
Leading to those intense reactions: fight, flight, freeze.
Exactly. Intense physical sensations, impulsive actions that feel completely incomprehensible and out of control to the survivor. Their rational brain knows they're safe now, but their body and emotions are reacting as if the trauma is happening right now. It's a direct hijacking of the present by the past, prioritizing perceived survival over rational assessment.
Finally, Pavlov's work, conditioned reflexes. How does that fit into this picture of emotional hijacking?
Pavlov's work with dogs showed how physiological responses, including emotional ones, can become automatically linked to previously neutral stimuli through repeated association. He focused on the interplay between excitation, activation, and inhibition, suppression, in the cortex.
Like the dogs learning to salivate at the sound of a bell.
Right. But he also found that if you create a conflict, a clash between excitation and inhibition, say, by presenting confusing or overwhelming stimuli, it could disrupt normal brain function. It could create persistent disturbances, almost like little islands of abnormal activity.
So our nervous system itself can get conditioned into problematic emotional response patterns.
Yes. It provides a physiological basis for how specific cues can automatically trigger ingrained emotional and physical responses, almost like the effect heuristic operating at the level of neural wiring.
And he saw inhibition not just as stopping something, but as protective.
He did? He proposed that inhibition could act as a protective mechanism, preventing the sensitive nerve cells from becoming exhausted by excessive stimulation or conflict. It's like the brain shutting down certain functions to prevent burnout. This could help explain things like dissociation or feeling numb in response to overwhelming emotion, the body's way of protecting itself by dampening the response, another form of automatic non-conscious control.
Okay, we've really explored the depths of how feelings can hijack facts, from the brain's fast tracks to deep psychological roots and trauma. It sounds maybe a bit daunting. So, the big question: how do we reclaim control? How do we actually cultivate that pause?
It might sound daunting, but the good news is we can exert more control. It starts with intentionality. Mali Csikszentmihalyi, the flow guy, has a great definition of consciousness.
Wish it.
He calls it intentionally ordered information. The key word is intentionally. Unlike dreams, where we're just along for the ride, when we're truly conscious, we can direct our focus, organize our thoughts, choose what to pay attention to.
So consciousness isn't just passive awareness, it's an active process of directing our mental energy.
Exactly. The insight is that we have the capacity to choose where our focus goes, rather than just being pulled around by every stray thought or feeling. That's the first step in creating the pause.
And he links this to having a unifying purpose. How does that help?
Having a larger purpose, something that gives meaning to your daily actions, acts like a powerful magnet for your attention, your psychic energy, as he calls it. It helps organize your consciousness.
So it kind of overrides the smaller, immediate emotional pulls.
It can, yes. When you're deeply invested in a meaningful goal, the immediate emotional ups and downs, the distractions, even fears, tend to diminish in importance. Your purpose provides an anchor, transforming life towards that state of flow where action and awareness merge. It gives context to immediate feelings.
William James also talked about the power of attention, didn't he? Interested attention and volition.
James emphasized that by actively choosing what to focus on, holding fast to certain elements, dwelling on them, we directly influence the stream of our thoughts and ultimately our actions.
So even though thoughts and feelings might pop up automatically,
We have the power to select which ones we engage with, which ones we amplify through attention. That selection is crucial. It's where our volition, our will comes in. You choose what gets the spotlight in your mind.
and Daniel Goleman connects this right back to the brain science, to retraining those fear responses.
Yes, Goleman points out that while the amygdala is key for learning fear quickly, it's the neocortex, the thinking brain, that's critical for overcoming learned fear, for relearning a more appropriate, less reactive response.
That's the pause in action, allowing the neocortex to catch up and regulate the amygdala's knee-jerk reaction.
Precisely. The insight is profound. Our rational brain can retrain our emotional brain. We can consciously work to modify those automatic emotional hijacks. It takes effort, but neuroplasticity makes it possible.
But Albert Bandura reminds us that just knowing this, just being aware, isn't always enough, right?
Right. Bandura stressed that awareness of, say, the consequences of our actions, contingencies, is important, but it doesn't automatically lead to change. People can know something isn't good for them, but still do it.
So what makes the difference?
The types of thoughts we generate around that awareness, our beliefs about our ability to change, self-efficacy, our internal self-talk, how we interpret the situation. These cognitions are what determine whether awareness translates into action. Changing your thinking patterns is as important as having the initial insight.
Okay, so cultivate the pause, direct attention, engage the thinking brain, work on cognitions. How do we translate this into building better patterns? Practical habits. James Clear's ideas seem useful again here.
Definitely. His concept of commitment devices is pure gold for managing emotional impulses.
These are ways to lock yourself into a good choice ahead of time.
Exactly. You make a choice in the present that makes it harder for your future self to succumb to temptation. Things like buying snacks in single-serving packs instead of a giant bag.
Or asking to be put on a self-exclusion list at a casino.
Or leaving your credit card at home when you go to the mall, if you're an impulse shopper. Or that outlet timer cutting off the internet, a commitment for the whole household.
You're designing your environment to make the desired behavior easier and the undesired one harder, preempting the hijack.
Precisely. You're using your rational brain now to outsmart your future emotional brain.
And his laws for habit building, making good habits obvious and attractive.
Those help too. Make it obvious involves things like using a habit scorecard to see your current patterns clearly, setting specific implementation intentions. I will meditate for 5 minutes at 7 a.m. in my living room. Or habit stacking. After I brush my teeth, I will do 2 minutes of stretching. Designing your environment helps too. Put your workout clothes out the night before.
Make the cue impossible to miss.
Right, and make it attractive. Uses strategies like temptation bundling, pairing something you want to do with something you need to do, like only watching your favorite Netflix show while you're on the treadmill.
Or joining a group where the behavior you want is the norm.
Yes, leveraging social proof in a positive way. Or creating a little ritual before a habit you find difficult to make it feel more appealing. These are all practical ways to work with your brain's tendencies, not just fight against them.
Beyond structuring habits, what about our overall mindset? How we handle setbacks seems crucial for not getting derailed by negative feelings. Carol Dweck's growth mindset work comes in here.
Absolutely vital. A growth mindset fundamentally reframes challenges and failures. Instead of seeing them as proof you're not good enough, a fixed mindset, you see them as opportunities to learn, adapt, and get better.
Like Bill in the Grit example, who analyzed his failures to learn from them.
Exactly. His mindset was, this is hard, I failed here, what can I learn to do better next time? That kept him optimistic and persistent. The insight is that consciously adopting a growth mindset changes your emotional response to difficulty. Failure becomes data, not devastation.
And Angela Duckworth's research on grit complements this perfectly. It's not just talent, it's perseverance.
Duckworth showed that grittier individuals, those with passion and perseverance for long-term goals, achieve more. Passion often isn't found fully formed. It's discovered, then developed through effort, and deepened over a lifetime.
So grit is about choosing that long-term commitment over the immediate emotional discomfort of struggle or boredom.
Pretty much. It's about cultivating that internal stamina, that ability to pause when things get tough, reflect, and keep going, rather than being hijacked by feelings of frustration or wanting to quit.
And Bessel-van der Kolk connects resilience directly to agency, feeling like you can make a difference.
Yes, he argues that resilience is the product of agency, knowing that what you do can make a difference. Experiencing yourself having an impact, mastering a skill, contributing to a team, these build an internal sense of competence and control that counteracts feelings of helplessness often triggered by emotional hijacking or trauma.
Like playing a sport well or singing in a choir, feeling that collective effort pay off.
Exactly. Those experiences build an internal reservoir of, I can do this, which strengthens your ability to navigate difficult emotions without being overwhelmed.
Finally, let's talk about the social dimension again, our relationships. They can either fuel emotional hijacking or help us regulate. That idea that relationships are mirrors.
That's a powerful one from 5 Psychological Truths. It suggests our unhealed emotional wounds, our patterns, inevitably show up in how we interact with others, maybe as defensiveness, needing to be right, people-pleasing.
All emotional live-in reactions.
Right. Healthy relationships, conversely, require ownership. Being able to say, okay, here's my pattern, here's where I need to set boundary, here's how I can repair things when I mess up. It's about taking responsibility for your emotional contribution to the dynamic.
And using I statements is a practical tool for this, especially in conflict.
A very practical tool. Instead of accusatory, you always, or you make me feel, shifting to, I notice the specific behavior, I feel your emotion, I need your request.
Like, I notice the dishes are piling up. I feel overwhelmed by the mess. I need us to figure out a better system for sharing this chore.
Perfect. It focuses on your experience and needs, making it less likely to trigger defensiveness in the other person. It creates a pause for clearer, less emotionally charged communication. Make the request clear, maybe with a time frame, and ask them to reflect back what they heard to ensure understanding.
And for introverts, Susan Cain's work in Quiet offers specific advice for managing their social environment to maintain emotional balance.
Yes, she emphasizes the importance for introverts, both children and adult, to create restorative niches, times and spaces where they can recharge away from excessive stimulation.
Like finding schools that value independent work or carving out quiet time at home.
Exactly. Respecting their need for solitude, setting boundaries around social energy. The insight is that consciously managing your social environment according to your own temperament is a key part of self-regulation. It helps prevent the emotional overwhelm that can lead to hijacking.
So wrapping this all up, it's been a really deep dive. The affect heuristic, this emotional shortcut, it's not inherently bad, is it?
Not at all. It's a vital, fast-acting system. Essential for survival, helps us make quick judgments when needed. The key isn't to eliminate it, but to understand it.
Understanding its mechanisms, the amygdala's fast track, cognitive dissonance pushing us towards consistency, the deep pull of attachment styles, unconscious fears, that understanding gives us power.
It really does. Because by cultivating emotional literacy, knowing what you're feeling and why, and mindfulness, paying attention on purpose, without judgment, you start to create that crucial pause.
That pause we've been talking about the whole time.
That's the space between the feeling hitting you and your automatic reaction. It's in that pause that wisdom can arise, where your logic, your values, your long-term goals get a chance to catch up to your immediate feelings.
Leading to choices that are more intentional, more aligned, and ultimately, probably more fulfilling.
Exactly. Choices that truly serve the person you want to be.
So here's a final thought to leave you with. We talked about B.F. Skinner, who believed maybe the goal isn't to design better people, but to design better environments that naturally guide behavior towards positive outcomes.
Right, shaping the external world to support better choices.
What if we apply that idea internally? What if the ultimate act of freedom, of self-management, is consciously designing our own internal environment, an internal landscape that actively fosters that pause, that space for reflection before reaction?
Hmm. Building internal structures through mindfulness, self-awareness, habit design, mindset shifts that make it easier for our rational selves to stay in the driver's seat more often.
Could that be how we truly learn to know ourselves accurately and therefore manage ourselves effectively, as the saying goes? By becoming architects of our own inner world, ensuring our feelings inform our facts rather than hijacking them. What kind of internal environment are you choosing to build?